Hey there and welcome back to another Disney video. And today, I want to take a walk back through memory lane and revisit one of the all-time great live-action remakes of classic Disney films, 101 and 102 Dalmatians. Now, I think it's quite clear that the trend of remaking the Disney animated classics has well and truly fallen out of favour at this point in time, if it was ever in favour. Despite massive box office returns the majority of the time, it inspires huge amounts of hatred and vitriol. I mean, take a look at the comments on social media or the like to dislike ratios on the YouTube trailers. All of that stuff. And I've made my opinions clear on all that before, so this isn't really a video to talk about whether those films had any merit or not, but to talk about these two films specifically, and to inform you that they are in fact veritable classics of the late 90s and early 2000s, even if the overall quality of the films themselves might not always be up to snuff. They're still great. Released in 1996, the first film pretty much shares the same plot as the original, with a few limited creative differences. The main human characters meet, they fall in love, they have a baby, their dogs do the same thing. Cruella, Anita's boss in this version, decides that she wants the puppies as she's a fashion designer and fur enthusiast. And after being refused, she steals them, and carnage ensues as the puppies, alongside the various other puppies that had been stolen, escape from her country estate and are hunted down by Cruella, who is in the end defeated by farm animals alongside her henchmen and is arrested. Nothing really revolutionary or groundbreaking, pretty much the exact same plot and sequence of events as the original, but it was a massive success. It cost around $67 million to make and grossed $320 million. So it was clearly a financial success. But from a critical perspective, apparently this film actually sucks, because it has a 41% critical score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 40% audience score, which is, it's not great, I'll be honest with you. In fact, I'd go so far as to say, those are truly woeful scores, and they have me a little bit shook. And it's a similar prospect for 102 Dalmatians. The Thing has a truly god-awful score of 31% critical and 32% audience. Whew! Really low indeed. And then to add salt to the wound, it also failed at the box office with a fairly low gross of $183 million off a budget of $85 million. And this film, well, it doesn't really follow up with the storyline of the first film in many respects at all. The Dalmatian link is through one of the 101 puppies, Dipstick, and then there's also the return of Cruella de Vil, who's had hypnotic therapy to cure her hatred of Dalmatians and ensure that she won't relapse. And in turn, she's been assigned animal-based community service. And then, obviously, the brainwashing eventually wears off, and she goes crazy again and embarks on a quest for vengeance against the dogs, which is foiled by her parole officer, the manager of the animal shelter, and the puppies of Dipstick. So these would be the grand puppies of Pongo and Perdita. Oh, and there's also a talking parrot as well. Yeah, I get it, people hate these films, people hate the Disney remakes, even the old school ones like this. Although, I gotta say the Jungle Book from the early 90s is still an underrated gem. Whew, I will not hear a word against that film. And yeah, I do realise I'm in the extreme minority here when I say that I really love these films and think they deserve a whole lot better than they got, because, yeah, they just do. I don't really care if you think I'm in denial or I'm delusional, and I realise that this is a deeply unpopular opinion. But I don't care because these two movies go hard. And maybe they aren't the greatest of all time, but I don't think they're as nearly as bad as people make them out to be, and there's certainly a lot to enjoy, or at least I think so. And so I guess I'll just ramble on and try to convince you of my point of view. One of the major elements that people always discuss when they talk about the Disney remakes is the accuracy to the original. People are mad when they're too different and thus butcher the source material, but then if they're exactly the same, there's the question as to why this was even made in the first place, with complaints through a soulless remake with no originality. And yeah, I can see both sides of the argument, and thus, it's a really fine balancing act they have to perform in order to make a film that's worth watching. And in my eyes, the film actually does manage to achieve this. In terms of the major overarching plot and characteristics, the story is largely faithful to the original work. The character designs and personalities are largely the same, with a few minor divergences, and the story arcs are pretty much beat for beat, with very minor divergences there as well. But where the changes really start to happen are in the minor details, the added flavour. They modernised the setting. They took a much deeper look into the characterisation of Cruella de Vil. I mean, she was always a focus in the original as well, but here, the dogs weren't voiced apart from creature sounds, and so they needed something else to fill the time. And thus, more time spent with the villain was what was needed. Plus, there was looks at her professional life, which was only really hinted at in the original film. And then all of this combined with a really great performance, to really just enhance the character of Cruella de Vil overall, and thereby really enhance the quality of the film itself. From a narrative point of view, I think the film strikes that perfect balance. It's well paced and engaging. It has strong character development and interesting arcs. Cool designs, cute animals, and really what's not to love? In my eyes, it's definitely one of the better Disney remakes, up there with Alice in Wonderland, which was a banger for sure. And yeah, I get the second film is nowhere near as good as the first film. I'm not deluded, or at least that deluded, but at the same time, I don't think it's really all that terrible either. Yeah, it's clearly not on the same level as the first one, I'm not going to convince you of that. In basically every single aspect, it is inferior. The script is less engaging and exciting. In many ways, it is a bit of a rehash of the first film, but this time with just more human involvement. The villain character arcs are less interesting, particularly Cruella de Vil. And the heroes felt like they were budget versions of the characters from the first film that just didn't end up returning. The design felt inferior, the music pretty much the same. So yeah, not great, but not terrible either. And I don't think it's as bad as the reviews would indicate. But at the same time, it also probably didn't need to be made at all. They clearly didn't have much of an idea, and thus, when in doubt, rehash, rehash, rehash. And I think that was reflected in its poor critical and commercial reception. But that being said, I just can't help but shake the feeling that there's something so deeply and truly wholesome in these films that makes me wholly unable to hate them to any real degree at all. I don't know what it is, they're just relentlessly charming. Yeah, they're sometimes cringy, but in the best ways possible. The characters are charming, the animals are cute, Cruella's a compelling and funny villain, her goons are similarly enjoyable. Yeah, this isn't high cinema, but who gives a shit about that really? They might not be Shakespeare come again, but it was damn fun for its time. And I loved them as a kid. My god, I love them now. Oddball is the cutest dog in the world, and her existence is enough to justify both films' existence if you ask me. But yeah, I think I've rambled on about this long enough, and so that's the end of the video. And with all that being said, I'd just like to remind you that these were only my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. How delusional do you think I'm being here? Do you think the films are utter garbage? Or maybe you think they're legitimately good like I do? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.